In this world, is the destiny of simps controlled by some transcendental entity or law? Is it like the hand of lust hovering above? At least it is true that said simp has no control, even over his own will. But the questions before you have yet to be answered. The story of the simp is one spun by the hand of lust and the hand of fate, forever forcing them into parasocial relationships, forever marching them towards even their own death, risen time and time again beyond the grave, in an endless cycle of destructive nature. Desiring for the touch of the unreal, the simp continues on his own evolutionary progress, as described by the holy scriptures of the netizens that have documented such things. Beginning with Twitch thoughts, eventually evolving towards the idols of the modern age, a creature born from the desires of the ill-trodden men of society. And this is our second leap into the virtual world of these creatures. Death nearly came for our comrades before, saved only by the timely intervention by one of these internet-dwelling beasts. But forever are our crew of simps, forever willing to brave these depths, to uncover the secrets of the beast of the simp apocalypse known only as virtual YouTubers.
I'm a petan, beautiful, cute girl, Necromancy. Uruha.
Fuck you!
I'm honey.
So in our first episode of this mini-series on the mythical creatures known as Vtubers, aka virtual YouTubers, we went over 3 Vtubers discussing the evolutionary process that these creatures tend to take. And at the end, we were nearly killed when we approached a wild Vtuber who seemed to be capable of summoning beasts of the avian variety quite easily. Thankfully though, we survived. And today, on this second episode of Internet Geographics, as we venture more into the depths of this virtual hell, featuring virtual YouTubers, we have decided to tackle a new topic and tackle 3 new previously unfeatured VTubers related to Hololive. This topic being something of a more grim variety as we enter further into VTuber hell, the concept and the fascination with death. In the land of Hololive, there are a variety of institutions that have dedicated themselves to the preserving of the knowledge of VTubers as a species. But among them, there are a breed of VTubers that have been preserved in the records that are directly related to death in various ways. Powers that have relations to death. People who have been affected by this power, and death personified. And according to our experts on the inside, there is a specific trio of VTubers in question that they would like us to cover, from the virtual land of Hololive. And the first of these 3, well, let's just say, she isn't exactly among the living.
Wifi sharing system kan ya. Tapi pasti harus ada yang namanya papa sharing system juga. Oh, tidak bisa.
Okay. See how it is.
It's amazing, you know. It's amazing how quickly things can go from bad to total shitstorm. But it's also amazing how quickly they can go from a shitstorm into a maggot-infested carnival where all the rules you learned in the movie Zombieland no longer need be. The year was 2020, and it's December. In our world, Christmas is just around the corner, But for the land of Hololive, they never really got the memo. Or rather, one specific breed of VTuber never really got the memo, and thought it was still Halloween, and would never really get the memo. It's unknown what caused an evolution for VTubers that would eventually lead to the birth of this specific breed of VTuber, but we can make a guess. Was it a virus? Was the virus born from man? Or was it something else altogether that brought forth this thing? No one knows for sure, but one thing we do know is that it was a welcome change. Meet what the land of Hololive knows as Kureji Oli, or as codenamed by us, Screaming Curry. Yeah! What you see before you is an example of a species of VTuber that lacks any self-control. Mating season seems to be in full swing every day, all year long, with a very specific mating call. By using her undead vocal cords, she produces a sound that, according to Hololive experts, hails from a place known as Indonesia in our world. The sound is an odd mixture of perversion and simplicity. While it doesn't translate to anything sounding lewd, the meaning behind the meaning, along with the way it's said, especially from codename Screaming Curry, acts as a mating call towards other VTubers, and sometimes non-VTubers, with varying results. Our own researchers managed to get a sample of this sound, so let's take a listen to it in her natural habitat. This is something that was a work in progress. We wouldn't know just how far this perversion of hers went, especially because most of us here at Trigger Studios couldn't really hear for at least a few months after her debut. But her fans are a bit different. What people expected from her was probably not what they got, but it sure as hell was something that they had experience with, which we'll go over in another segment. But we'll get to that. When she first debuted, instead of being met with shyness, people were met with what looked like shyness, but sounded more like an ear rape meme in real life. Instead of shyly speaking to her fanbase, she shyly shouted at the top of her undead lungs, making a Dragonborn shout look more like a Dragonborn whimper. In the wake of the destruction caused by her atomic screams, she made up for it with lots and lots of streams. And much like the other members of Hololive, and other VTubers even, she had many awkward stories to tell. One such story intrigued us, leading us to an interesting discovery. This species of VTuber specifically seems to run their own culture based on the dealings of the criminal underworld, being very likely to surround any hostile opposition, using various forms of fear tactics. It's unknown as of now where they picked up this form of intimidation from, but it's likely that due to the high usage of video games among VTubers, one of their ancestors may have picked up one of the Yakuza games, or they just happened to watch Casino with Joe Pesci.
You motherfucker, you!
Now, aside from this breed of VTuber being naturally born with the desire to surround and dominate people, they seem to follow similar trends to humans, such as higher education, being quite adept at reciting the formula for the symbol for pi, and unlike a certain other VTuber, we don't mean cream pies. During a live stream, Screaming Curry mentioned how she was in school and was pretty much the winning daughter of the entire student body. In a way, she was truly the embodiment of the famous quote from a wonderful modern-day philosopher. Winning. And while this is all interesting, the most obvious trait that most of our team tried to figure out was her odd ability to reattach limbs.
Oh, there goes my arm again.
At one moment, she might seem fully intact, but at the slightest movement or sound made, an entire limb or two could fall off. But at the drop of a hat, she can seemingly reattach them. What our experts did was take a small tissue sample from the remains, put it on ice, and bring it back to an underground lab where we study many things related to VTubers, sharing our knowledge with those that preserve these creatures. According to our research, we found that all these species of VTubers have one ancestor in common in their family tree, which may explain this unique ability to reattach limbs. The problem is that another question is brought to light, one that we don't feel confident in answering, and that is, how did she even die to begin with, considering that her common ancestor is Deadpool.
Shit. Did I leave the stove on?
While it's hard to imagine somebody with a regenerative healing factor dying, it must have happened, and this is where her ability to reattach limbs may come from. And much like how Deadpool is constantly in the hands of Lady Death, there is one VTuber, our next subject, who is more than likely the one who reaped her immortal soul from this world. One who doesn't exactly excel at video games, but seems to excel at giving our experts third-degree burns. A being whose power is more intrinsically linked to death. Death is something that comes for us all, at least to most people. But what if you gave a face to death? What if the virtual world had its own Grim Reaper? Would this Grim Reaper be an ominous, horrifying image of the macabre grip of death itself? Would it be a Hades that would steal your soul with a single swipe? According to our researchers, this entity that is supposed to be the virtual enigma of death, instead of entering the world of VTubers with a bang, she entered it with a what? What the fuck? What the fuck is a guh?
Do it, cowards!
Listen, I understand that you support me. Go fuck yourself.
I can take him away. I have that power.
The date is only a few months prior to the debut of Screaming Curry. It was one day after what could be considered the most important day of remembrance for the United States of America. But for the virtual world, it may very well be its own Day of the Dead. A being who wasn't even native to the land of Hololive, or even any virtual land, had descended upon the virtual world. Behold the virtual Grim Reaper itself, the Boing Boing Grim Reaper that waits, riding upon the motherboard sticks, to reap virtual souls from VTubers who stray too far from the path, now choosing to be a VTuber herself. While Screaming Curry was somehow brought back from the dead and turned into the undead Coomer that we know, there was one entity, one who came to reap her immortal soul. That person, Mori Calliope, or Calliope, or according to some sources, Mori Cantaloupe, is what is known to us as codename Spitting Death. A Grim Reaper who got bored with just reaping souls and began the journey from the spiritual world into the virtual world. This makes her a one-of-a-kind entity in the realm of VTubers. But what makes her worthy of a title like Spitting Death is her apparent interest in the spitting of sick beats. Alongside her ability to toss out deadly rhythms, she seems to be adept at the usage of such commonly mocked and memed instruments such as the recorder. Though nothing tops the story of how she came across the kazoo, proving once and for all that death is not as smart or informed as we'd like to believe.
So, unfortunate news, I ordered a kazoo, and something must have gone wrong, in the delivery. There's fucking nothing in it. Like nothing. For the sound. Here, this is what you hear when you hear my kazoo, hold on. Fucking
A few minutes later.
hum into the kazoo, okay, well fine, hold on. Ah! What the fuck? What?!
A closer look at Mori in what she's made her natural habitat will reveal this hang-up that she has in action. Notice how she seems to be perplexed at how to even utilize such simple instruments that many of us might be familiar with. So yes, we've established that she's not exactly full of the aptitude for such instruments. But if you paid attention, there is one thing that she's quite adept at. When she lacks any instruments, one thing that seems to be a skill that most, if not all Grim Reapers have, is a certain sound that they make when the need for the jovial sounds of music is needed. A sort of guh sound. By making such a sound, she is able to call forth the souls of her followers, labeled as deadbeats. In doing so, she then begins to perform for them, perhaps harvesting power for her grimly duties through their chants, as they seem to enjoy such a performance of gushiness, you might say. A gushiness that can only be described with the following words. As her fans begin to chant this, every time she spits forth this guh of hers. Oh nut! Oh nut! I busted a nut. As you can see, she holds quite the power over the souls of others, even the souls of creatures that are of the avian variety. Such is to be expected of one who personifies the face of death. In fact, her followers are so enchanted by her power over them that when combined with the degenerate behavior that VTuber fans exhibit, they have decided to label her as their father. What can I say? I've never had faith in humanity to begin with. Anyway, back on topic. Spitting Death is a bit of an interesting oddity. She was never a native to these lands to begin with, and rather than being born in the virtual, she merely adopted it. But she did rise quickly, showing the ability to adapt. But while she may have power over death in many ways, there is one entity within Hololive that seemed to hold quite a bit of power over death as well. But her powers over death have quite the audible quality to them. Death is something that comes for us all, correct? But for some, that isn't a permanent end. Even with the might of spitting death, Screaming Curry didn't stay dead for long, due to the power of our next subject. She was revived through the power of necromancy. Necromancy being the supernatural practice of raising the dead, to deny the rule of death itself, and to circumvent God's natural will. One such VTuber species possesses this power, debuting in July of 2019. And in the case of this VTuber that we have given the codename Yon Metal Fly.
Wait, what the fuck? What happened to the damn video?
Hi guys. Text-to-speech commercial guy here. It's time for another commercial break.
Oh, this better be fucking good.
Unlike last time, this time we have something important to tell you. Did you know that every day, YouTube forces good videos to go down the drain? Videos that you never knew existed, because YouTube doesn't want to support creative and hard-working YouTubers? Well, have I got a video for you. Do you like Vtubers? Of course you do. You probably shell out merch for them constantly, playing with them, like you do your right and left hands. Do you like memes? You probably do, because your life may as well be one shitty meme after another. How about video games and anime? That's a given, because you wouldn't be watching a video about Vtubers if you weren't all weebs. Well, check out Milkwood Sage's video that parodies Youtube Rewind, since it was cancelled in 2020 like the Clintons cancelled Jeffrey Epstein. Here's an excerpt from the video.
Hey, ugly. Would you believe me if I told you that I built my own computer? Would you believe me that I built my own PC with my own two hands?
No, that...
Well, I did!
Turns be forgot and days of old anxiety.
What a fucking asshole.
For old anxiety, my dear. For old...
I did, and I'm so so strong I broke a piece in the process. I was putting in rum, whatever it's called. It likes it. Google Chrome really likes it.
Hey, 秦王公啊！ Holy shit!
Wake the fuck up, samurai.
Well, how was that? Pretty good, right? I thought so. We now return you to your regularly scheduled piece of garbage.
Hey, so I'm just recovering in the hospital. I have no idea what fucking happened. Well, let's get back to our ground level research team and continue. In the case of Yon Metal Boing Boing, she holds a great power over death. While she might not be the personification of death like Mori, she has the power to raise the dead. Which there appears to be a multitude of ways that she does this, each one having a greater success rate than the last. From what our research team has found, her usual and first method is to usually act overtly cute. Similar to how one might try to attract a mate, she tries to attract the spirits of the dead, labeled by her as fan dead, which will then attract whatever Reaper might have taken their souls. Typically, these spirits react quite fondly to this method, and they are more than willing to go along with her. But when the Grim Reaper approaches to reclaim their prized otherworldly possessions, that's when the sneaky Rushia will enact the second phase of this VTuber species method of raising the dead. The VTuber will thrust a hidden kitchen knife into their victims, and thus are free to claim the souls of the damned for themselves, raising their spirits and placing them back into their bodies, after stitching them back together if need be. This doesn't kill the Grim Reaper permanently, mind you, but it works to give the Necromancer VTuber time to take what they desire. This is the typical method that is used, and it's also the method that supposedly rose Screaming Curry from the dead. The second method, however, is almost a reversal of that. In life, we all fear death. But what about those who are already gripped by it, and dragged into the realm of the ethereal? What then? What do the cursed souls roaming the afterlife fear? Well, surprisingly, what the dead fear is death itself. The second method of revival, should a soul refuse to return to the living, is one of fear. With a powerful sinister glare and the use of an unknown item, possibly another kitchen knife, the soul is then forced to return with her back to the world of the living, or the death of the dead is wrought upon them. But the third and final method, being the most successful, and perhaps the most sudden, is a siren's song of pure chaos. Not a siren's song of serenity or beauty, but one that may as well be a legit air raid siren going off right next to your ear. With the power of her voice, she can raise the dead through a cacophony of deathly howls, bringing them not only back from the dead, but putting them under a trance. A trance that keeps them coming back for more. A sort of army of the undead, fully loyal to their egg witch-eating lolly necromancing princess. However, that doesn't always work. At times, the spell of her destructive vocal cords that would put a kaiju to shame can start to come undone. The trapped soul begins to drift apart from Rushia, and when this happens, her last option is to feint the process of her own death. By playing dead, or by pretending to be close to it, this playful, cute act inspires a sense of duty in her victims, where they feel this sense of a Sleeping Beauty effect. The belief that a kiss can wake her from the grip of death begins to wash over them, and they come running back. However, again, it is all an act. It's not known why she desires so many souls, or as they are called by her breed of VTuber fan deads, but perhaps it's needed to sustain and refill her finite life. Perhaps their souls fuel her magic. Perhaps she's secretly an evil mastermind, developing a deadly weapon to rule the world. Or perhaps she's truly just a lonely individual, a solitary breed of VTuber that, while desperate for the affection of another, can never truly have it. Whether it's because of her yandere tendencies, her propensity to unleash a deadly torrent of vocal shouts, or even her own lack of certain assets, we don't know. But what we do know is that this is all we have for you today. We hope you've enjoyed today's deep dive into the mysteries of the virtual anime girl world, and we hope you'll... Oh, what the fuck? First time? Oh, shit.
今天阿七墙上写着秦香莲的三十二岁了，整个当朝驸马郎的齐君王啊，满皇上的回二岁了，整个当朝。今天阿七墙上写着秦香莲的三十二岁了，整个当朝驸马郎的齐君王啊，满皇上的回二岁了，整个当朝。今天阿七墙上写着秦香莲的三十二岁了，整个当朝驸马郎的齐